Hey guys, what's going on? In this video, we're going to get to the Eunos Cosmo. It does need work. It's not perfect by any means whatsoever. That's how I ended up with it. The previous owner started doing some modifications that did not jive with it whatsoever. It would not shift out of gear. We'll get into that, but we're going to get into the fuel system a little bit and how we're going to get it to shift and what needs to be done, what they didn't do correctly initially in the build. All right, check it out. All right, guys, so some of you know that I went and picked up this Eunos. Some people know what it is. Some people don't even have a clue what it is, but we're going to dig into it here. Take a look at it. Like I said, it's not perfect by any means. It's got some dings and dents and stuff here, which is no big deal. I can take care of those. It is what it is. But here it is. So here's the inside, a little bit better shot than the pictures and stuff. Nice box from Japan. It's got mirrors in it for it. Interior's in pretty good shape. And let me get this hood popped so you can see where we're going with this, because it was already started to be modified for a single turbo. It wasn't done properly, so they got the car to run, just wouldn't move in gear. I don't know if I can get this hood to stay open because of the snow on it. But I do have the intake manifold ripped off right now. The engine has been rebuilt. I gotta get this vacuumed. And it has been rebuilt not too long ago. And it's just sat because they got it to run and not be able to drive, unfortunately. I'm gonna be modifying a lot of these solenoids to be wiring for new sensors with the new ECU that's in it. Well, going into it, we'll get into that a little bit, but it is a mess under here right now. I'm going to take care of that. That's not going to be a big issue anyways. The issue was a lot of stuff was cut off. The cast was pulled out and had a FC one put in, which I got to take out and put the actual one back in, or the computer, because I have to piggyback the computer in this car to the Adaptronic. Let me see if I can do this without falling. And in other words, I got to piggyback it and share signals so that the stock ECU can tell the transmission when to shift, or it's just going to stay in first gear or not even go into first gear. So let's get inside and we'll get a little more into that. All right, guys, I wasn't able to get this thing in the garage yet, but it's not too bad out today. I mean, it's starting to get cold now, so I'm picking up. But I did get the lower rail and injectors installed. Fortunately, I did find all the plugs to the old injectors. They didn't hack those off, so that's good. And all the solenoids wiring is intact, which will turn into the fuel pressure sensor. I did get that mounted up, so now I can mock my fuel lines up. I did get the oil filler back in. I cleaned up the engine bay a little bit, and I did get the proper cast back in it, so we're looking good. Let me get back inside. We'll mess around with the ECU wiring and stuff like that and show you what's up with it. But also, on another positive note, nothing worked in the car, and I've got this now, so we're doing a little bit better. All right, so made it back inside. There's a lot to install in this. So here's most of the parts. I got to add a couple coolant temperature sensors. It's not good to share the temperature sensor with the factory ECU versus a standalone. The other one's for the fuel. But we got the radium fuel rails, pulsation dampener, ID 1300s and 1050Xs, Adaptronic M2000. No reason with going with the M6000 on this being a 13B car. And as I said, I was figuring out the wiring for the solenoids to switch over to like the boost controller and fuel pressure sensor, oil pressure sensor, all that, so I can monitor it, because the Cosmo doesn't have an oil pressure gauge or anything like that. A couple other issues I ran into was I thought I was going to be able to throw this manifold on it, save myself a bunch of time and stuff, but jams the wastegate right into the manifold. So back to the drawing board, had another manifold laying in. I had to shorten down. I had to take almost 2 inches out of it, and I have to adjust the wastegate, just probably bring it out a little bit to clear the motor mount. But other than that, I think we're going to be good with this setup. And I had to also take the turbo flange and turn it this way a little bit, because the flange was welded downhill on this manifold, which was kind of funky. So you had a derpy looking turbo pointing down to the ground. Yeah, so for wiring wise, I've got this all broken up. Injectors, basically what's going to what lead. Like this is going into number 4 on the factory ECU harness, and this is going to number 1, number 2, etc. I'm waiting on parts, so we're actually not going to be able to get into that this time. Yeah, I've got a patch harness coming from Bonsai Racing that'll actually let me wire this all on the bench and not in the car under the dashboard, contorted and stuff like that. All right, so now you can see where we're at with this thing, and why I had to modify it. So, as you can see, that's real close to the boot. So I'm gonna have to cut that right in here and tip it in a little bit to get it away from the boot in universal joint and the CV. But that's the other issue, is the mount right there. I don't know. I'm gonna have to kick the wastegate pipe out this way and put the wastegate over in here on the side of the downpipe instead of underneath it. But other than that, that's minimal, and I think it's gonna work out fine. Let me slap the turbo on here. All right, I got the turbo slapped on. This is definitely not the turbo I'm gonna be using, but originally when I put this on, the turbo hit the radiator hose because it was derped down anyways. But everything's gonna fit fine. So I just need to work on that wastegate down tube, and then that's done. The downpipe fits in there fine. The exhaust is a little long right now. I got to cut that down, put a V-band flange on it anyways. But yeah, like I said, this is definitely not turbo I'm using. It's some Godspeed thing. I'm using a Borg Warner S263 SXE. So yeah, let me get this all back apart, and we'll worry about that and get back to the fueling system a little bit. All right, we made it back inside. Let's get to the secondary rail. As you saw, we already had the primary mounted and fuel pressure regulator and stuff. But yeah, as you saw, I had this mocked up in the turbo deal here. So I got the radium rails and 1300s installed. You need the hats to go to 11 millimeter. Some people asked that on the forum the other day, and so there it is. But right here, we're waiting on an adapter to come to put the fuel temperature sensor in, which is always good. I mean, any sort of data that you can get when you're tuning these is awesome. So there's that. But one of my biggest pet peeves is people like to use the rotary discs on these to clean the gaskets off. And you can see I've already brought this down a couple thousandths, and yeah, you don't use these to get the gaskets off. I mean, now I'm going to have to goop it with silicone because that's never going to seal. And they're all rounded. And when you put the manifold on, this has got a big gap over here now because, you know, you're removing a ton of material. As you can see, they did the same thing on this as well. I got most of that out. So, yeah, word of advice, just use a sanding block and a piece of sandpaper if you can't find anything to do it, and you can at least keep it flat, because now you're battling to seal the intake manifold, and these are already a pain in the ass to seal anyway, so don't do it, all right? But as you can see, this one cleaned off nice, no issues. And since they cut that TPS sensor off, I found Toyota or Mitsubishi TPS wiring works. And since I have no idea how short they cut it, I put on a GM weather pack connector. Same thing with the air temperature sensor. I'll put the other side on the harness and then it'll all plug in. So yeah, that's pretty much where we're at with this, because we're waiting on parts. So now it's just a big waiting game. Gonna work on this manifold, get that all ready to go in. Yeah, so we'll get to the rest of this in the next video. Thanks, guys. Later.